Welcome. I'm Tracy Smith, and this is Here Comes the Sun, a closer look at some of the people, places, and things we bring you every weekend on Sunday morning. Katharine Graham was a trailblazing CEO and publisher of the Washington Post during some of the 20th century's biggest events, like the Watergate scandal and the Pentagon Papers. Her life, her friendship with then Washington Post shareholder Warren Buffett, and the extent of her feud with President Richard Nixon are all the center of a new documentary titled Becoming Katharine Graham, now streaming on Amazon Prime.
At the center of the story is an unlikely friendship that began on June 4th, 1973.
Ah, this is the letter.
That's the famous letter.
The famous letter.
When Buffett sent Graham a letter after buying a significant amount of the Washington Post Company's stock.
I said, I'll never buy another share unless you personally okay it. And I signed a document, and we became friends.
Later in the show, Warren Buffett on Katharine Graham's heroism.
Would you say Katharine Graham was one of your heroes?
Oh, yeah. To do what she did under those circumstances, show me anybody else. I mean, there are people, the firemen during 9/11. I mean, there's all kinds of heroes in the world. But,
of course, yeah.
But it was a unique kind of heroism by a woman. And she didn't think of herself as representing women all of it. She was kind of uncomfortable in that. But like it or not, that she was in the spot.
Then Lee Cowan visits Julien's auction, an auction house giving people a chance at owning celebrity memorabilia. Owners Martin Nolan and Darren Julien created the company over 20 years ago. Julien's has sold stars' iconic looks, from Michael Jackson's sequin glove to Olivia Newton-John's leather jacket from Greece.
Martin Nolan and Darren Julien.
This is Mariah Carey's.
No way.
Are the heart and fanboy souls of Julien's auctions,
UK telephone booth owned by Ringo Starr,
which has been making quite a name for itself in the celebrity memorabilia space of late.
I'll take one of the guitars.
The two of them couldn't be more different.
That's cool.
Really cool.
Martin is from rural Ireland, Darren is from rural Indiana. But 20 years ago, they saw a potential market that few others did.
That's all coming up right here on Here Comes the Sun. When Katharine Graham's husband, Philip, committed suicide, she was thrown into his role as publisher for the Washington Post. Graham went from being a housewife to becoming the first female CEO of a Fortune 500 company. It was because of her that the Post's stock price went up 3,000%. Norah O'Donnell sat down with Graham's dear friend and Washington Post investor, Warren Buffett, to learn why he believes Graham was one of a kind.
If there's any story that should be told, it should be her story. If I was a young girl, I'd want to hear that story. It would change my self-image.
Warren Buffett rarely gives interviews, but also rare his friendship with the late trailblazing publisher of the Washington Post.
Why did you want to talk about Katharine Graham?
Well, she was one of a kind, and she was terrified of the job. She knew she could do things, but she'd been told all her life that she wasn't, and that females didn't do things. I mean, her mother told her, nobody's interested in listening to you. And so all of a sudden, here she is, and she had an all-male board that was waiting for her, and all they wanted was her to stay home and cash the dividend checks.
Graham was thrust into the role, taking over the company after her husband, Philip Graham, died by suicide. She was then at the center of some of the century's biggest stories.
The much discussed and apparently widely read but still classified Pentagon documents were turned over to Congress today.
She made the decision to publish the Pentagon Papers that helped lead to the end of the Vietnam War.
5 men with bugging gear were found in Democratic headquarters here in the Watergate building.
It was Katharine Graham who supported the investigative journalism that led to President Nixon's resignation after Watergate.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
It was such an extraordinary time.
Oh, everything. And she had been drummed into her head. Only men can succeed at business.
The worst handicap women work under is the self-inflicted one, that if you've grown up thinking of yourself as a second-class citizen, that you tend always to put yourself down.
Graham's journey from housewife to the first female CEO of a Fortune 500 company is laid out in a new documentary, Becoming Katharine Graham, now streaming on Amazon Prime.
I said, Mrs. Graham, you control this company lock, stock, and barrel, but you're still worried about me.
At the center of the story is an unlikely friendship that began on June 4th, 1973.
Ah, this is the letter.
That's the famous letter.
The famous letter.
When Buffett sent Graham a letter after buying a significant amount of the Washington Post Company's stock.
I said, I'll never buy another share unless you personally okay it. And I signed a document, and we became friends.
He used to come to board meetings with about 20 annual reports, and he would take me through these annual reports. I mean, it was like going to business school with Warren Buffett.
Why did you invest in the Washington Post in the first place?
Well, it was ridiculously cheap.
You saw a bargain.
Oh, it was a super bargain. It was worth at least $500 million and was selling for $100 million.
She was beyond lucky. Thank God our stock got so cheap that it attracted Warren's attention in 1973.
Don Graham is Katharine's son and a former publisher of the Post.
Don Graham says that Warren Buffett is the greatest thing in business that ever happened to Katharine Graham.
She needed somebody to reassure her.
What were the things you would say to her to boost her confidence?
The biggest thing I said is, I said, when you look in the mirror, you know, it's a funhouse mirror because you're seeing it through the eyes of what the males are telling you about it. So my job is to turn that funhouse mirror into a regular mirror. And she knew I was on her side. And I admired her enormously. And she was torturing herself. She couldn't help doing that.
Nixon hated the Post and us personally for his dying day.
The documentary, for the first time, shows the public the full extent of President Richard Nixon's feud with Katharine Graham.
I saw her on the TV last night, Mrs. Graham. I would have thought she's about 85 years old. She's only about, I think, something like 57.
Oh, no, I know that.
She's aged terribly.
She's a terrible old bag.
Oh, she's an old bitch in my estimation.
That's right.
Did she talk about facing that kind of sexism and those kind of taunts from even the President of the United States?
Well, Nixon didn't scare her at all.
What did scare her was the idea of losing the paper.
The Washington Post, its press is crippled in a violent strike by...
Never did that feel more real to Graham than in 1975, when the Post's printers damaged the presses and went on a bitter strike for more than 4 months, limiting the paper's circulation.
How challenging was that?
Well, that tore her apart. She was suffering in that way at that time more than she ever suffered during Watergate or during the Pentagon Papers or anything, but she thought she might be blowing everything.
Buffett told us Katharine Graham prevailed because she was brave, and it's because of her that the Washington Post Company's stock price went up more than 3,000% while she was publisher. But she didn't just make Buffett a lot of money.
She said, my effect on Warren has mostly been limited to his lifestyle. I introduced him to the possibility that a steady diet of fast food and cherry Cokes might not be the best for him.
Yeah, but she didn't convert me.
So your favorite foods are?
Whatever I was eating when I was 6.
Which was?
It was hot dogs and hamburgers and Coke and ice cream sundaes. Root beer floats are my favorite. I frequently have a dinner of a root beer float.
And so you're at Katharine Graham's house at this fancy, her very
fancy.
Yeah,
and she's got a chef and a French.
Her French chef, and you get served a lobster. And what did you do with the lobster?
Well, I unfortunately attacked it from the wrong side. and finally, and of course, she was very reluctant to criticize me. Finally, at some point, she said, it might be helpful or something if you turn out. And what did I know about lobsters?
Graham died in 2001, and Buffett served as an usher at her funeral.
That's a good picture.
As for the Oracle of Omaha, the legendary investor is now 94 years old, still chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, and still making front-page news. Every word he utters has the power to roil the financial markets.
Can I just ask you a couple of questions about kind of how you see the state of the economy right now?
Well, I think that's the most interesting subject in the world, but I can't talk about it now. I really can't.
How do you think tariffs will affect the economy?
I mean, tariffs are actually, we've had a lot of experience with them. They're an act of war to some degree.
How do you think tariffs will impact inflation?
Over time, they're a tax on goods. I mean, the tooth fairy doesn't pay them. I mean, and see, you always have to just, and then what? You always have to ask that question in economics. Always say, and then what?
So is there an answer for that when people say, you know, inflation persists, consumer prices keep going up, when's the end in sight?
No, prices will be higher 10 years from now and 20 years from now and 30 years from now.
And what do you think about what's happening in Washington right now? About efforts to
I think
cut
it's Washington.
Yeah.
It's, you know, technology changes things, all kinds of things, but Washington is Washington. And the problem with politics is that you tend to have to make tiny compromises as you go along.
And what do you think about Elon Musk's efforts to cut?
Well, I better not get into that. Oh,
do you talk to him at all?
I've talked to Elon a few times.
And any thoughts about his current efforts in Washington? No. No. You've always been bullish on American companies.
Majority of any money I manage will always be in the United States.
And why is that?
It's the best place. I was lucky to be born here.
Up next, an exclusive excerpt from Norah O'Donnell's chat with Warren Buffett, something you can only see right here on Here Comes the Sun. Stay with us. As promised, here's more from Norah O'Donnell's interview with Warren Buffett.
What's your favorite memory of Kay?
Well, I would say one of them would be when that book of hers won the Pulitzer. She'd worked on that 5 years. Meg Greenfield, everybody tried to help, but you got to write your own book. I mean, and it was an incredibly interesting book. It was an honest book. I never met anybody that read that book that was disappointed that they'd read it.
Yeah.
It was remarkable. And it was tough, I mean, for her to write.
Would you say Katharine Graham was one of your heroes?
Oh, yeah. To do what she did under those circumstances, show me anybody else. I mean, there are people, the firemen during 9/11. I mean, there's all kinds of heroes in the world. But,
of course, yeah.
But it was a unique kind of heroism by a woman. And she didn't think of herself as representing women all of it. She was kind of uncomfortable in that. But like it or not, she was in the spot.
And she confided in you many of those
She trusted me, yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about Katharine Graham's legacy, but I wonder if you want to talk about your legacy.
Not my legacy is peanuts. My legacy is Berkshire.
Do you feel like you've been lucky?
Oh, I've been so lucky, it's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Do you have regrets?
Oh, everybody has regrets. Yeah, everybody has regrets. No, you're born smart, but you can be born smarter otherwise, but you're not born wise.
Up next, going once, or maybe going twice, to Julien's auctions. Welcome back. Marilyn Monroe's Happy Birthday, Mr. President dress is just one of the many celebrity artifacts sold at Julien's auction in Los Angeles. The company's 50,000 square foot warehouse is full of rare pieces, including Princess Diana's outerwear, and most recently, John F. Kennedy's underwear. Here's Lee Cowan.
15,000 people pay from $3,000 to $1,000 to honor Mr. Kennedy.
It was 1962, a celebration of John F. Kennedy's 45th birthday.
This lovely lady, Marilyn Monroe.
But for one breathless moment, it looked like Marilyn Monroe had shown up to the party naked.
Happy birthday to you.
That dress caused a stir then and again nearly 63 years later, when it sold at auction for $4.8 million, a world record. It was put up by the same auction house that also sold Michael Jackson's sequin glove, Olivia Newton-John's greaser jacket.
Tell me about it, Stud.
Even this box containing Truman Capote's ashes.
Items that we've sold 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that comes back to the auction, sells for multiple times of what we sold it for way back then.
Martin Nolan and Darren Julien
This is Mariah Carey's.
are the heart and fanboy souls of Julien's auctions,
UK telephone booth owned by Ringo Starr,
which has been making quite a name for itself in the celebrity memorabilia space of late.
I'll take one of the guitars.
The two of them couldn't be more different.
That's cool.
Really cool.
Martin is from rural Ireland, Darren is from rural Indiana. But 20 years ago, they saw a potential market that few others did.
So these are Marilyn Monroe's jeans.
Martin and Darren, along with their staff, like Director of Appraisals Laura Woolley, have proven that there's value in what other auction houses sometimes overlook.
They're actually JCPenney's, which is kind of fun.
Oh my gosh.
Sure, Marilyn Monroe's jeans will likely go for tens of thousands of dollars, but what about her personal eyeshadow? Or Elvis Presley's gas card? Or a simple plaque from Judy Garland's dressing room? Each of those sold for less than $11,000. Now that's not cheap, but it's not the price of fine art either, said one collector.
He had said that it's a lot sexier to have John Lennon's guitar on the wall than a Picasso.
Mind you, he did have Picasso's
yeah,
as well.
He did.
But he was buying his youth.
Julien's real innovation was the idea that if a celebrity was big enough, they didn't need to be pushing up daisies to be pushing items up for auction.
Well, and I remember Cher, when we were trying to talk her into an auction, she goes, "But guys, I'm not dead yet."
Julien's has auctioned off hundreds of Cher's belongings.
It had to be you.
While that Bob Mackie dress she wore on the Sonny and Cher show went for more than $100,000, Julien's also sold this, her armadillo lamp. As unfortunate looking as it is, Cher revealed it was actually given to her by Kiss bassist Gene Simmons.
No wonder that relationship didn't last. But it took it from probably $20, $50 piece to a $6,000 armadillo lamp because it's got a great story.
You know, you go into a Sotheby's, you go into a Christie's auction, it's like, oh, the finest jewelry are here being sold, right? And Julien's like, I like to think that we're a little bit more of a rock and roll auction house, for sure.
We're gonna sell it at $27,500.
Cody Frederick, Julien's auctioneer,
sold at $27,000.
We'll never forget when this lot came up. A Rolling Stones themed toilet seat cover.
You know, with the red tongue, you know.
Turns out it belonged to Bill Wyman, the former bass player for the actual Rolling Stones. It sold for more than $1,000.
And I'm just like, is that a world record on toilet seat covers? It's gotta be.
Julien's 50,000 square foot warehouse in Los Angeles is full of both the ridiculous and the rare.
This is Princess Diana's hats. These are her shoes. These are her handbags.
From Princess Diana's outerwear
How do we make this dignified?
to John F. Kennedy's underwear.
You know a lot about a piece going in. The one thing you don't know is how much emotional value other people place on that piece until you get into that auction room.
It's even at a weird slant in the film.
Collector Dan Lanigan has spent 30 years buying up movie props, stuff that studios would often just throw away.
Maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, some of the stuff you could have gotten for next to nothing, right?
Yeah.
And why? What changed?
The understanding that people can get this stuff. Julien's found this piece.
That's John Belushi's hat from the Blues Brothers movie.
Which is one of those films that ever since I was a kid, I adored.
How much for the little girl?
He bought it for more than $28,000. Not the most he spent, not by any means. Blade Runner is one of his favorite movies.
Deckard's blaster? No way.
That gun is a holy grail for Blade Runner fans.
Paid through the nose for it, paid as much as I paid for pretty much anything.
Choose wisely.
Speaking of holy grails, Dan actually has one. The grail used in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
That's the cup of a carpenter.
That's the cup of a carpenter.
That's right. That's the cup of a carpenter.
Oh, man.
When I bring someone like yourself and show my collection, like, oh, is that from that? Or is that from that? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I've had people cry when they see a piece from their favorite film. Really?
Will you ever have enough, you think?
Oh, I have too much.
I
I have enough. I have too much, yeah.
He won't say how much his collection is worth. We can't even tell you where he stores it all.
So the costume was actually worn by Arnold.
The props are all prisoners to his passion, something only fellow collectors, he says, understand.
The connections really matter to
Yeah,
people.
they do. They do.
Is that a Banksy?
And this is a Banksy, yes. This is
Back at Julien's, more items were coming in and going out, each with a story, each with a past. And there were plenty that Martin wasn't quite ready to reveal.
But you can't tell me whose it is.
I cannot tell you, but if you watch this space, check Julien very often.
Terry, this is the closest I will ever get to John F. Kennedy. My mother would be so proud.
JFK's white boxers became a red-hot item.
Sold $7,000 paddle number.
That's $3,500 a leg. Not bad for something that could have gotten lost in the laundry.
I'm Tracy Smith. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you here next time on Here Comes the Sun.